Evening. I talked to y'all last week. We talked about Hanukkah, and I had my little Hanukkah menorah, and I told you I had another one that's just the 6th. Well, I brought it tonight, so it's not the best shape, but this is. They just have 3 on either side and 1 in the middle, and they would use this during their Sabbath celebration and things like that. But it's not. The reason I got it, I had it in my mind when I saw it. I bought it. I thought it was going to be used during Passover, and I thought, well, I'll have it. But it's not. They just use normal candlesticks in Passover. Tonight we're going to finish up the feast. I called this one also the Feast of Israel, not a Feast of God. And there's a reason for that, which we're going to get to very soon. But this is Purim. Purim. I think the Jewish translation is Purim. And it has to do with the book of Esther. And it is all about Esther. Yes, I just went blank. Yeah, I had it right the first time. I will find it. After Nehemiah. It is the story of the book of Esther is about a person named Haman and how he tried to trick the king into killing all the Jews, and then it kind of backfired and it came back on him. And we'll talk about the whole story in just a minute. But the celebration is about how Mordecai and Esther had victory over, and it's always the wicked Haman. Every time you see it, when he's talking about it, it's the wicked Haman. And this, I'm going to read some verses out of chapter 9. I'm a little hot. Can you turn it? No, not that. This. Yeah, I was getting some feedback. Okay, so in Esther chapter 9, start with verse 20. It says, Mordecai recorded these events. This is after everything that happened. He recorded these events, and he sent letters to all the Jews throughout the provinces of King Xerxes, near and far, to have them celebrate annually the 14th and 15th days of the month of Adar, as the time when the Jews got relief from their enemies, and as the month when their sorrow was turned into joy and their mourning into a day of celebration. He wrote them to observe the days as these days as days of feasting and joy, and giving presents of food to one another and gifts to the poor. So he kind of just said, let's celebrate this victory, this thing happened. We'll celebrate it from now on, and we're going to do it in joy and feasting, presenting food to one another and gifts to the poor. And that's kind of the 4 main things that go on during Purim. And then drop on down to verse 24. It talks about Haman. It says, for Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all Jews, had plotted against the Jews to destroy them and had cast the pur, that is the lot, for their ruin and destruction. So in the story, when we just studied it not very long ago, I don't know whether I preached on it or if it was on a Wednesday night studying about it, but he basically was trying to decide the day, so he took kind of like a dice, which they called a pur, and he rolled it, and it came up this particular day, and that's how he chose the day. And that's how Purim got its name, from the casting of the dice to determine what day that should happen. But when the plot came to the king's attention, he issued written orders that the evil scheme of Haman had devised against the Jews should come back on his own head, and that he and his son should be hanged on the gallows. Therefore these days are called Purim, from the word pur, because everything written in this letter, and because of what the Jews took it upon themselves to establish the custom that they and their descendants and all who join them should without fail observe these 2 days every year in the way prescribed and at the time appointed. So this is not something that was prescribed or ordained by God, okay? It was the people themselves. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I mean, it's just that this is how it came about. We celebrate lots of things, right? In fact, almost all of our celebrations were because people decided to celebrate it. July 4th, Labor Day, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas even, because it's not really probably at the time that Jesus was born. Easter, all of our other holidays, they're all man decided on them. But that's not a bad thing. That's just so you know this is where they came from, where the kind of a background of it. It is to be observed on the 14th and 15th day of Adar, which is going to be February, March time period, late February, early March. Remember, the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar, lunar-based calendar, so it all has to do with when the first full moon or the first new moon happens. It's usually the new moon, I believe, and so that's why it's between February and March, and why Easter is March and April, and it moves back and forth. It's because it is also Passover, which is a lunar, based on the lunar month, and we celebrate Easter as part of what the Jews celebrate for Passover. I'm going to come back to the next stuff that I talked about. Oh, you don't have anything to put up there anyway, but I don't want to read that yet. I'm going to come back to that. So, key people in the story. You have King Xerxes or Ahasuerus, Persian king. You have Queen Vashti, who is his wife originally. She was told to come into the presence of the king. He had a celebration, a party that went on for, now I have to look, but it was like a year and a half, or 180 days. So I guess that would be 6 months. Had a celebration. No work, nothing, just a vacation time for 180 days. And during that time, he had all of these people, dignitaries from all over, and he had a big banquet and stuff for him. And he commanded his wife, Vashti, to come in wearing her crown and kind of parade her in front of everybody so they could see her beauty. Now, the way it is written, a lot of scholars think that the king was telling her to come in her crown, and only her crown. And she refused. And because of that, the men, the leaders of the country got together and they said, she needs to no longer be queen because she disobeyed you as the king, and if our wives hear about it, then they're going to disobey us. So they deposed her from being queen and then sent out to try to find a new queen. Mordecai is another one of the, he's actually Esther's cousin, and he's the one that was raising her. Her parents had died at some point, and he kind of took care of her and raised her. And then you have Esther, or Hadassah is another name for her. She eventually becomes the new queen. You have Haggai, who is the keeper of the harem, and he's the one that really works with her to get her exactly what she should take in when she goes to be with the king. Then you have Haman. Haman is the Agagite, however you want to say it. Agag was the king of the Amalekites. And years before, I don't know exactly how many years, but probably a couple of 300 anyway. King Saul was commanded by God to go out and completely wipe out the Amalekites. Kill them all, don't take any plunder, kill everything. Completely wipe them out because they were a very wicked people. And so Saul went out and he defeated Agag and all the Amalekites, and then brought Agag and a bunch of plunder back. And Samuel goes out to meet him, and he said, "Look, I did everything you commanded me to. I defeated them." And Samuel says, "Well, what's the bleating of sheep I hear? If you did everything you were supposed to wipe them all out, kill everything, not bring any plunder back." And then Saul started making excuses of why he did what he did. One of Saul's descendants, again, 100 years later or so, you have Saul and you have Agag. You want to guess who's a descendant of Saul? Mordecai. And Haman is a descendant of Agag. And Saul did kill Agag, but that was after everything else happened. So that may have been part of the problem between the two. And then you had a couple other guys. I don't know that I have them up there. Bigthana and Teresh. They plotted to kill King Xerxes, and Mordecai found out about it. And then Harbona, and I don't really know why he's mentioned either one of these at the end, but he was mentioned in the thing that I got. He's the one that told the king that Mordecai had a pole set up in his yard to kill Mordecai on, and so they ended up killing Mordecai on that same pole. Now, let's talk about the story. So what happened? You all tell me what happened in the story of Esther. Start off with, king had a big party, told his wife to come, she didn't. So they deposed her. So what happened next? They held auditions. That's a nice way to put it. Yes.
Pretty much any female that met the criteria.
Right. Any pretty, good-looking female of a certain age was taken. They were put in beauty treatments for like a year, and then they would take one at a time to go in and spend the night with the king, and then they would become part of his harem. Okay? And then Esther became queen. He liked her better than anybody else, so she became the new queen, and that is all God's doing. It's not really what, I mean, God is not mentioned by name in the book of Esther at all, but he is at work all through the book, and we're going to talk about something that kind of celebrates that fact a little bit later. So Esther becomes queen, and then Mordecai hears about this plot. What was it? These two guys I had mentioned a while ago, Bigthana and Teresh. Yeah, they had a plot. They were going to kill Xerxes. Mordecai found out about it. He sent word, and they figured out it was right, and those guys were killed, and Xerxes was saved. And what did Xerxes do about it? He forgot about it. It was like, that was nice, but I don't remember anything about who did that. Yes, he does. And then Haman becomes powerful. He's like second in command, just under King Xerxes. So he's the most powerful subject, I guess you could say, under King Xerxes. Why did he not like Mordecai? Mordecai wouldn't bow down to him. Why would Mordecai not bow down to him? That's right. God says not to bow down or not to worship anything except him, and they felt like bowing down to somebody was the same as worshiping, and so they wouldn't do it. And Mordecai was at one of the gates, and apparently Haman went by that gate a lot, and he just kept getting madder and madder because Mordecai would not bow down to him. Now, what I said a while ago about Agag and Saul may have had something to do with it as well. We don't know. So Haman comes up with a plot, and he goes to the king, and remember what he tells him? He said, there's a group of people here that they're rebellious, and they're causing problems, and we don't need them. And we just need to wipe them out. And he volunteered to pay, and I want to say it was like close to $1 billion in our money today, into the treasury to help kill all of the Jews. He wasn't happy just killing Mordecai. He wanted all Jews dead. And what did King Xerxes do? Yeah, he said, okay, here's my ring, make it so. Why would he do that? Because his wife now, Esther, is a Jew. Yeah, she kept it. He didn't know that she was a Jew, right? And so the king sent out this decree, and it went all through the kingdom, and they had, Mordecai had picked out a date, and not Mordecai, Haman had picked out a date, and they were going to kill all the Jews. And the Jews had no right to defend themselves at all. Okay? So Mordecai appeals to Esther. And Esther says, well, I can't just go into the king. Some of the laws of the Medes and Persians and the Syrians for them just didn't make a whole lot of sense. Two of them were, number one, if you weren't summoned by the king, you could not go into his presence. If you did, you would be killed, unless he held out his scepter for you to touch or kiss or whatever he did. But if he held out his scepter to you, then the guards there wouldn't kill you. But you have a very small split second of time before they kill you for him to do that. So, and there's a famous phrase that Mordecai uses. Remember what that is? Who knows if you were in this position for such a time as this? Yeah, this very reason. For such a time as this. And so she says, okay, I will go, but let's spend some time fasting and praying before I go for him. And if I die, I die. Okay? And Mordecai also said, you might be safe from this, but if you refuse to help God's people, you'll probably die some other way. That wasn't exact words, but in the meantime, Haman has decided he wants to get rid of Mordecai, so he has a gallows built. Now, it's not the kind of gallows that we normally think of, like in Old West, where they had the platform, the floor drops out and they hang them. This is more like a very tall, skinny, sharp pole that's driven into the ground. And they basically impale people on it to kill them. And so he sets this up, and then he's getting ready. He's thinking, tomorrow, first thing, I'm going to go in and ask King to kill Mordecai. Well, that night the king couldn't sleep. And so what did he do? Yeah, bring the records in to read. Any of you ever read business meeting notes? That's kind of what it is. and it's probably would be good to put you to sleep. But he read them, and in it he reads how Mordecai had told on these two guys and saved King's life. And so the king decided, well, I need to honor him. So the next morning, bright and early, he gets up, and who walks in the front of the palace? Haman. And the king says, come here, I got a job for you. He said, what should I do to honor somebody that has been really good to the king? And Haman is thinking what?
Thinking it's him.
He's talking about me, yeah. Who else in all the kingdom is number two or number one, number two in command, I guess. So he said, okay, this is what you do. And tell me what it was before I remember.
Fancy coat,
Yeah.
ride, and he had to go in front of them and proclaim.
Right. This is what he put him on the king's own horse and put a robe on him that the king himself had worn, and then get somebody important to lead him around the city of Susa, proclaiming, this is what happens to somebody who pleases the king, or who is, faithful to the king, or whatever words, I don't remember. So then, who did he send? He sent Haman to carry Mordecai around, yelling all of this stuff. There went his chance about killing him. Then, Esther has a banquet. And in the banquet, she only invites the king and Haman to this banquet. So he's really feeling, full of himself from that too. And the king says, okay, what do you want the next day? And that would have been the day after all of this other happened. Because just after he led Mordecai around the city is when they called and said, it's time for you to go to this banquet. And his wife told him before that, said, you're in trouble. I don't know what it is, but you're in trouble. So he gets in, has the banquet with the king and Esther, and she basically says, I'm a Jew, and somebody has gotten you, tricked you, King Xerxes, into killing all of my people. She said, if they would have just been put in slavery, I wouldn't say anything, but he's wanting to wipe it out, wipe them all out, kill everybody. And the king was really getting mad, and he said, who is it? And what does she say? This vile Haman, this wicked Haman. And the king he's furious then. And Haman is trying to get out of there as quick as he can. Well, he ends up going over, and the king walks out to kind of cool down. Haman goes over and tries to beg Esther to forgive him. The king comes back in and thinks he's trying to, molest the queen, and says, we need to get rid of him. And that's when the guy, whatever his name was, said, hey, Haman's got this old pole set up. He was wanting to kill Mordecai on it. We can just kill him on there. And the king says, yeah, go do it. So they killed him. Now, I told you there were two laws that were kind of iffy. One is you can't come in the presence of the king. The other was that if the king made an edict of any kind, a law, and he put his ring on it, it could not be revoked. None. And so Esther went to him and was like, what's going on? What can we do? And he said, well, my hands are tied. I can't do anything because that edict went out. And so he gave her his ring and said, if you all can think of something, do it. And so she got with Mordecai, and they said, okay, how about this? We just tell everywhere that the Jewish people will have the right to defend themselves. And so on that day when they were supposed to be wiped out, they were able to attack their enemies, all the people that wanted them dead, and they killed them all. Now, this is a very important thing, they did not take any plunder. Why? Right. Back when Saul killed the Amalekites, God told him not to take any plunder, and so they didn't. And then we read a while ago that they set up the Feast of Purim, and Mordecai was promoted. We're getting about 5 minutes. Hopefully I can get through all this. The themes, one of them is the divine providence. I told you God is at work all through this book, even though he's not mentioned. Divine providence. And then justice and retribution, and then reversal of fortune. And I'll give her time to put those up there so you can, if you need to, write those things down. And then I want to talk about how it is celebrated. Now, most of this came from two different sources. One is a book that I've had for a long time, and it's one of the books that I used when I did all of these things. The other, I think I told you a few months ago when I started teaching through these, or knew I was going to, I got onto a Jewish website and got on their mailing list, and they send out things all the time about all of the different feasts and different things that they do. And so I have Jewish sources. This is not Christian Jews, and it's not Christians. This is really Jewish people telling other Jewish people about this holiday. The one online was much more conservative than my book. So there is, before, on the first thing, under how it is celebrated today, they have a 3-day fast before Purim actually starts, and that is called the Fast of Esther. Remember when Mordecai came to her, she said, okay, we're going to fast for 3 days and pray, and then I'll go in to see him. So they have this 3-day fast. And then on the evening of Purim, it's a 1-day feast, by the way. It's not 8 days or everything. But the evening, remember, their Jewish day starts at night, or at sundown. And so that as soon as the sun goes down that evening, they will read through the book of Esther. Megillah is how they say it, but it's Esther. They'll read through that in the evening, and then they read it again all the way through the next morning. One thing I read, I think it takes 45 minutes to an hour maybe to read it. They are required to hear every word, well, most every word. So when they're reading it, they're very, very quiet until one word. There was a curse at some point, and I looked because I thought it was in Esther, but I didn't find it. I didn't have time to read the whole thing. But mainly, it was probably one of the rabbis at some point had a curse that Haman's name be erased from history. So in reading Esther, every time they come to the name Haman, all of the people, everybody that's there, whether it's in the temple, whether they're reading it at their home, whatever, they make lots of noise. They'll yell, they'll clap, they'll have a rattle called a grager or something that way that they'll spin. It's kind of, I got the idea it's kind of like one of those things that used to get around with the handle on the bottom. Something like that. They'll blow horns. One of them said that the last year that a man brought a tuba up to the temple and was blasting it. They'll boo, they'll jeer, they'll whatever, every time his name appears to try to blot out his name so you don't hear it. So maybe his name is not blotted out forever, but it is drowned out. And then they will come along to chapter 9, verses 7 and 9, and it says, and I wish I could pronounce all of these names. They also killed. They'll read all of that in one breath as fast as they can. These are the sons of Haman, and they were all killed on the same day. So when they come to that, they just go through it as quickly as they can and all in one breath. And then it goes on to verse 11, verse 10. It says, these were the 10 sons of Haman, son of, and the enemy of the Jews, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder, and I already talked about that. So they read through the book of Esther twice. They yell and scream and jeer and everything. Every time they hear the name of Haman, they read the sons very, very quickly. Second thing they do is they send food. Remember when I told you when they first set it up, Mordecai wrote for them to observe days of feasting and joy and giving of presents of food to one another and gifts to the poor. So it is tradition to give at least two kinds of food to at least two people. It could be fruit, it could be cake, it could be nuts, it could be little waters of wine. We'll come back to that too. So they have to find two people. And one of the things I read, it was talked about how this is, everything that they do on the day of Purim is exaggerated. I mean, they might give gifts of food to people at any time, but on this day they have to hunt down and find two people to give food to. And if people give you food, it is customary for you to give them food, so you might have to have some extra little snacks and stuff just to do that. The third thing is giving gifts to the poor. And again, they search out the poor and try to find them and give them. Doesn't have to be a whole lot. They talk about the half a shekel that the temple charged. So a lot of people give like a silver dollar, and they'll give one to every, at least two different people. And then they get together and they have a big feast. That one is called Sedah, I don't know. And they get together and they have a big feast, and it's very joyous. And they say the Kaddish, which is a prayer over the wine. Now, on Purim, I guess I need to go back and say this now. It is a time of joy and a time of, but they also look at it as kind of a whimsical time. And so a lot of things that they do it in a nonsense way. They make fun of things. Like on this one, they will take words from several different verses and say this verse ends with the word, or has the word day in it. Then they'll find another verse that has the word day in it, and they will put them together. And one of the ones that they use a lot, it says, the sixth day were finished the heavens, proclaiming the glory which fills the universe. His ministering angels ask one another, is Sarah your wife? All of those comes from verses in the Bible, but they just put them in, just kind of make fun of things. And then, yes, they also dress up. They have costumes that they all wear because God was he's working, but he wasn't seen, so they wear things to do that, costumes to do that. And they eat special treats, little pastries that are triangular shape and folded, and they call them Haman's ears, and they're supposed to be really good. And then they have the big party, they eat a lot, and they drink a lot. One day a year that they just go whole hog on everything. One of the rabbinical teachings says this: it is the obligation of each person to be so drunk on Purim as not to be able to tell the difference between blessed be Mordecai and cursed be Haman. That's the one in the book. I told you the other one was more conservative. He did say there were some that don't do any wine and stuff, but this guy that wrote the book was all about drinking and getting drunk and all of that stuff. So that's the biggest part of the celebration, I guess. Questions? I know I went over. Sorry, Bob. I gave you extra time last week. All right, unless God changes my mind, we're going to start talking about the names of God next week. So, and I haven't forgot what you said. Okay. All right. Well, let's stand, join hands. We will sing something. Something beautiful. Oh.